Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Simply Reflecting. I'm your host, Dutch, and I'm so glad that you're here joining me for this week. That's right, another week. Your ears are not deceiving you. Continuity is the key word of the month of May. 2 episodes in a row, okay? 1 week apart. I don't know how I'm making it happen, but somehow I am. I know how I'm making it happen. It's about 20 minutes before my bedtime, and I'm deciding to film now because I filmed an earlier version of this, but it wasn't really fulfilling the hopes and dreams that I had. The vision, rather, that I had for that episode. So we're trying it again, but I'm also trying to let go of perfectionism. So I'm going to force myself to post this one, and it is what it is, and it will be what it will be. So all that being said, I'm so glad you're here listening, and that I'm talking, and that you're listening. But in a way, it also feels like you're talking with me, I think is what I'm trying to say. So thank you for listening is what I'm trying to say. It really means a lot to me. And any feedback or thoughts that you have, I'm always want to know, hear, listen, etc. So this week, we're reflecting on 2 things. The first is being the voice. Being the voice is what I'm going to go with. And the second is anxiety hangovers, okay? And what I mean by both of those things are I finally finished my grad school class for the semester, and last week I had to go to bat on behalf of our community, and that was scary, but also really affirming, and I want to talk about it. And then second, anxiety hangover. I don't have hangover anxiety because I don't drink, but I'm sure if I did, I would. But anxiety hangover, which is something that I've been experiencing a lot lately, which is my OCD has actually not been horrible lately. Don't want to say that too loud, but I've been noticing that in its place, lovingly, amazingly, fabulously for me, I've been having this like ongoing residual anxiety after events. So like if I'm nervous about something and then I complete the thing I'm nervous about, I'm finding that afterwards I'm still nervous about it. So I want to get into that as well. So, but either way, I'm so glad you're here. And also I want to do the advice section again. So if you want advice from somebody who clearly jumps all over the place, holla at me. Okay, 2002. But hit me up in my DMs. I will check them and I will listen and tune in. So starting off, first topic of the day, being a voice in a space where you're nervous about using your voice, and then the response that comes with it. So to set the stage, if you follow me on Instagram, you see my stories. This professor I have is a challenge, to say the least. And he has said some things which I am very much in disagreement with, not even based in opinion, based in fact, also based in opinion, but based in fact as well. And a few weeks ago, he announced to the class that he was going to make us watch this movie about the, quote, political incorrect issue of transsexuals, end quote. I think heard everything you need to know from that point forward, but that is what it was. So the movie that he made us watch was, I forget what it was called. It was like No Way Back, All the Way From Here, Forever and Never. Like it was something like that. All Roads Lead to Hell should have been the title of the movie for watching this movie, because any part of it was just awful. But anyway, it was a movie about people who had transgender people who had transitioned and then were detransitioning now. I want to preface this by saying detransitioning is a totally valid part of gender fluidity and experience, and I am in no way bashing the experiences of the individuals who shared their detransition stories and their experiences. That's not what this is. What I'm bashing is the way the movie was set up, the so-called medical professionals they had in the rest of the movie, and the fact that this movie, which by the way was pulled from AMC, pulled from film festivals, pulled from Vimeo, and blasted across every major whatever for being factually incorrect and not using the correct science, and featuring medical so-called experts who have been debunked and torn apart, quite frankly, by every major medical association, that this was the movie we were using to reference and talk about the trans experience in this class, which, asterisk again, or side note again, why on earth we were talking about adults transitioning and detransitioning when the class was called Child Development? Okay, this is an education class where we're supposed to be learning about the development of children. Gender and sexuality is involved in that? Of course. Could we talk about transgender youth and adolescents? Of course. Why we're centering on this movie? No idea. I will say, though, he did manage to bring it back to children, because the whole focus of the follow-up class in regards to this movie was talking about children who are transgender and how horrible it is. The effects that being gender nonconforming and receiving the care that you need is so horrendous for children. So you can only imagine. So this movie was horrible. I watched it, I put up with it, and then I had to show up to class. Now, I was really nervous about going to class because the general vibe of this class has not exactly been a welcoming community, if you will. Right now, I have no idea. There could be somebody in the class who's trans. There could be other people in the class who are queer. There are the general vibe though, and I know for a fact, a lot of the people in the class, because it came up, don't know trans people, have not had one don't have real life interactions with trans people. I have a lot of interaction. I have friends that are trans. I'm queer, like I'm in the community, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not trans, but I don't think I need to sit here and prove to you my queer card. You know what I'm saying? But you get what I'm saying. A lot of them don't have experience with trans people. And then this is the movie they're watching for the context of what it's like to be transgender today. It was so sick and twisted. And a lot of the class is very South Brooklyn. It's on Zoom, but it's very South Brooklyn. And if you know anything about New York, you know South Brooklyn, it's very red. It's not a welcoming place, especially for queer people, transgender people. I'm making a gross generalization. There are lots of queer people that exist in South Brooklyn. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying it can be. You hear New York, you think like everybody's inclusive, and that is not the case at all. But that could be a whole different conversation. Anyway. What I'm trying to say to you is the class was not giving live, love, laugh, queer rights for all, liberation for all. And this is the movie that a lot of these people are coming into this classroom using as their data and knowledge on trans people. And it's completely false information. It's bad science. It's junk science. It's transphobic. It is harmful to the trans and queer communities, right? All of these things. And I'm showing up to this class and I gotta say something. I have to. Yeah, I'm not gonna show up to this class and not say something, but I was really nervous about doing it. Now, I wanna put another side note to this and say I have been very lucky in my life in academic settings to be in rooms where other people agree with me, right? So my other major, I had two majors in college. This is also important to the story. One of my majors was dance, one of my majors was health science, public health. I'm not even sure really what my major was because I changed my major 7 times. But once I landed on the health science, public health major, they then changed the name of the program like 5 times while I was there. I think I ended with a degree in health science with a focus in public health. I don't know. We're gonna have to go look at the transcript. But I was in the honors college. I was a little geeky. And one of my thesis was public school teachers' perceptions of health education. And one of the things that I did as a part of that study, I interviewed all these teachers, was looking at gender affirming care and its role in public school classrooms and how it impacts public health education. I say that to say, I've done a little bit of research on this topic. So I was going in on a very different end of the spectrum from a lot of the people coming into this class. And because my other major was dance, most of the time I was in class with people discussing things, I was in rooms with people who agreed with me. And when I left my dance classes, because the theory classes for dance, you really get into it. When I left those classes and I had to go to my health science classes, I usually at least had a friend in the class who I knew agreed with me. So in academic settings, I've had to speak up, and I've disagreed with professors before and I've spoken up for myself, right? But typically I feel like I have an ally in the class, or I'm with, like-minded people. And that was not the energy I was going into this room with. So I was nervous. And I don't have experience in that setting. I have experience being in places where I'm experiencing, discrimination or whatever, like senior year math class at Dane Thompson, I think was his last name. Was that his last name? I'm gonna just say at Dane. Not that he's ever going to hear this podcast, but he was my high school bully. And one time in senior year math class, I got up from a chair and then he had to sit in my chair and he was like, I'm not sitting in that, insert many slurs about our community's chair. And the teacher heard and didn't say anything. But anyway, the point being, I know how to clap back outside of a classroom, but I was a little nervous about having to clap back inside a classroom and not flying off the handle, which was something I was trying to be very conscious of going into this because I was so distressed. I was boiling over about it leading up to the class, obsessing. Hello, OCD. Because I didn't want to go into the class actually and fly off. Like, well, I did. I wanted to pop all the way off. But I also knew that wasn't going to bring me what I needed, because I knew I was facing up against somebody who was committed to the misinformation they were learning, and they were committed to this narrative that trans people are harmful, trans people are bad. I mean, there were points in the class he even said he likened the trans community to a cult. Like, it's C-U-L-T, cult. It was so sick. And I didn't want to give him my anger, if that makes sense, but I did want to stick up for myself and our community and people who I care and love about. And I also didn't want other people in the class to shut down to what I was saying, because I knew, again, a lot of people in the class, this was their reference for queer and trans people. So I wanted to make sure that this is horrible to say, but I didn't want to, it's not that I didn't want to offend anybody, because I could care less who I offended, but I didn't want to put people on the offensive and on the defense or whatever it is. I never know which one it is from the jump. I wanted people to not see me as threatening, is what I'm trying to say, and instead be like, oh, maybe he has something to say. So it was a very fine, nuanced line that I was walking going into this class. To get to the point, we got into the class and we got right into it. And he says, what did you all think of the movie? And palpitations, sweating, and thank God the class is on Zoom. And I played it as again, I was trying to be very non-threatening. So I wasn't like, I'm disgusted by the fact that you showed this whack-ass movie. The class was South Brooklyn, but I didn't give South Brooklyn, okay? I reeled it in. It was a little less Brooklyn, but still a little bit. But you know what I'm trying to say? I didn't want to, so I did the whole I'm really surprised that this was the movie that we were watching in class, considering that so much of the data was really not up to date and the research isn't backed by real science. I mean, some of the statistics, I'd be happy to go through them with you. I have a lot of the research and data to back it up for context. I have studied a lot around gender affirming care, and it was really shocking to me, some of the statistics and science that has been debunked and, blah, blah, blah. You get the vibe I was going for. Immediately, he was like, oh, well, we have one person who disagrees. Please. It was not about disagreeing. And when I tell you, I then got a Zoom message. I literally thought to myself, this is not about disagreeing, but okay. And then I got a Zoom message from somebody in the class messaging me being like, hey, Dutch, I just want to let you know I'm with you on this. I am so overwhelmed. And it was something like, this is so much for me. And we both know this isn't about agreeing or disagreeing. Girls, oh my goodness. I was so low-key emotional getting that message, because I went into this classroom feeling like, oh, I'm so alone. I'm so alone. And that was such a reminder of how important it is. I know this is so cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. How important it is to use your voice in spaces, even when you're, use your voice even when it shakes. But all it takes is one voice in the space. And you have no idea who in that space you're connecting with, who you're also freeing to share their experiences, or whose minds you're clocking, you're starting to be like, oh, get them thinking, right? Representation is everything. I'm not trans, right? But I am queer. I don't think anybody in the class was trans. Again, I don't want to make that assumption, but I was the queerest thing in the room at that moment, basically, is how I'm trying to put it, right? And when I tell you I got that message and I flew, I was off. I was still nervous and I was still like, ooh, but I was flying. Knowing that was there, I was like, oh my God, I'm not I was off. And the rest of the class was an insane amount of transphobia, transgender misinformation, and gender everything from receiving gender affirming care doesn't provide you with doesn't improve mental health outcomes. That's statistically false. nobody is happy after they transition. I mean, it was just every myth that you could come up with. There's actually a really amazing document from the American Social Work Association, I'll link it, that goes through all the myths and debunks them when it comes to transgender, gender non-conforming care. And I am not joking with you. It was almost as if he had the same document up on his screen and he was reading the myth and I was reading the truth. I mean, it was insane. He was talking about how schools help kids transition. Like the fake news, like, remember when they were saying that like teachers are transitioning kids? Yeah, that was happening in the room. So, I do want to also add, like, not everybody that I was classmates with was supportive. One person did sort of fly off on me about 12 and 13-year-olds getting gender reassignment surgery. I was like, that isn't happening, but okay, like, I'll send you the data. And then this girl came in kind of, I thought we were locked. I thought we were cool, okay? And then she said to me, she said, Dutch, can I ask you a question? I said, of course. Now, mind you, he has now been the entire class. Once I started going, I commented on like one or two more things after my initial comment. He would then share something with the class and immediately go, Dutch, what do you think? Dutch, do you agree? Dutch, would you think this is... He kept trying to get me in these gotchas and I just kept coming back. Cool, calm, collected. I disagree, or this has been my experience. In my experience working with queer youth, I have the data. Here's the data. I'm happy to share the data. My data says otherwise. I'll send you the data. I just kept saying that over and over. So this person says, Dutch, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. She said, do you think that today's, because we live in such a liberal and activist world, that the students, the children and adolescents that you know that are queer or, transgender and have transitioned, do you think they were forced to do it? I said, forced? She said, yeah, do you think it was peer pressure? They only did it because of this activist world we live in? Oh, give me a break. Give me a break. Now, this was the one moment where I wish I had responded with the disgust that I was feeling, but I was so taken aback. I literally repeated the question. I was like, what? So I was like, no, I don't think that isn't happening actually at all. And it's pretty brutal out there. And the children and youth that I know who are queer and who have transitioned and who are transgender, gender non-conforming, whatever it may be, are incredibly brave and facing a brutal world. What I wish I had said was, go yourself. You. Because what? I don't know what it was about that particular question, but I think it was the way that she was somehow, and the whole tone of him and a lot of people in the class were somehow setting themselves up to be victims because other people were expressing their gender identity. It's so sick and twisted. And I wasn't shocked by it because we know these people exist, but I was shocked by the prevalence of it in a teacher education class. And I was really, truly devastated that these are people working in classrooms, that there is such a lack of understanding when it comes to queer and transgender and non-binary youth. Like, yo. Anyway, fast forwarding, rewinding at the same time to the one voice thing, to the voice being important, rewinding to that topic, fast forwarding to the end of the class, this really kind person raised their hand and they said, Dutch, I just wanted to thank you for sharing your experience. It was really great to hear your expertise and your knowledge on this, and I learned a lot, and also asked me if I knew like any resources for queer youth and transgender youth. And I'm trying not to get emotional about that. I'm emotional about it because it did, 100%. Did it feel good that like, oh my God, I used my voice and it had an impact and somebody heard me? Of course, that felt really good. It did. But what makes me so emotional is I feel like the world we're in right now, and please, let's be real. Fascism has always been in America. I'm not one of the ones saying it just arrived in January, but in the context of the country we're living in right now, we are being assaulted on the next level, on a new plane of like speaking up doesn't matter, using your voice doesn't matter, fighting for things doesn't matter. It can feel so pointless, so inhumane, so like, girl, what are we doing out here running our mouths about this? And this moment in class reminded me like, no, it's not all stupid. It's not all pointless. It is inhumane and horrible, but like, that is the reality they want us living in, that using our one voice in one room where we think it doesn't matter, like they want us convinced that using our one voice that we have in every room we're in, like it doesn't matter. It's pointless. You shouldn't do that. And it's not. And it really, I needed that. It was helpful. And I'm saying all this, I know it's like so cliche and like a little like, ooh, but I'm not trying to be like positive Polly, but the world is so cruel right now. And it feels to me sometimes like infinitely pointless. Like, why am I saying this? Who is listening? I'm working against a system that is just insane. And this was such a reminder for me that you are working against a system that's insane, but you can also work on one gear, like of that whole system. And the way you work on one gear is by using your one voice in every room that you enter in the ways that you can, right? Like, I think some people in that room at least heard a different perspective, and that's so important. And I know it's so tiring, and in many ways, please do protect yourselves and keep yourself safe. And don't speak up in spaces where you don't feel safe or where it's not safe or it's just exhausting. Like, for example, if there was another trans person in that room, I would not want them to bear the load of having to do all this defense work. So I would want to speak in that way, right? Because that was also what this moment was. Like, it was kind of a twofold moment for me because I was very much speaking up as a member of the queer community, right? Like, and at the same time, I'm not trans. I don't identify as trans. And so this was a moment where it was like I was representing a group, but I was also picking up for a group where I could pick up, right? I could pick up the work. I could pick it up. And it was emotional for me. It was emotional work for me, but it wasn't the same level of work as if I was literally defending my literal existence as a trans person. You get what I'm saying? I hope that's making sense. This is a very long way of me saying use your voice in the rooms you enter because you literally never know what impact it could have, where it could land, even when you feel like it's totally pointless. And I'm cheering you on wherever you are. And it was hard and it was really awful. And I still have a lot of anger about the class. And I'm going to write a letter, I think, to the dean. I am going to write a letter. Putting even the harm that it brings to the trans community and the transphobia, it's the fact that this professor at a graduate level class is using incorrect data. That alone is cause for issue and concern. Like, if I'm required to have all my data be correct, you better come correct with all your data. Now, this professor did do that whole, like, data can be manipulated. You see the data that you want. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, yeah. The hundreds of studies are manipulated. But anyway, that class was crazy. It was an intense experience. And then it led into this thing that I wanted to lead, that I mentioned at the beginning, this anxiety, the residual anxiety hangover or whatever we're referring to it as. I finished the class. I had been so anxious about the class. I finished class. I was like, okay, I said to my partner, I was like, I gotta go for a walk. Like, I have all this energy, right? So I went for a walk. And then the anxiety got worse and worse and worse. And I was actually more anxious after the class than I was before the class. And I've been noticing that like a lot lately, which kind of sucks because my OCD hasn't been like too intense lately, which thank you. Hopefully I'm not jinxing it by saying that. But this residual anxiety has swooped in where I've been finding myself so anxious, either following events or recalling events, which that's probably OCD actually, if I'm getting into it, like the recalling of events and bringing them up for anxiety. But it's been more immediately following a moment that should bring relief, and it's not, and it's actually becoming more anxious. And so I've been thinking so much about what drives that and why my mind like always has to have something swooping into with the anxiety. And this is not revolutionary. I know there are so many people who talk about this, but it's finally clicking for me how much hypervigilance plays a role in my anxiety. So hypervigilance being like, I always am aware. I'm always thinking about what's coming next. How do I prepare? What do I need to do? Who do I, right? And I've always been like that my entire life. And I think a lot of it is genetic. Like my mother is like that. My grandmother is like that. But also a lot of it is environmental. And part of the reason why my mother and my grandmother are like that is because of the environment that they grew up in, they were raised in, right? Like my mom and my grandmother both had very challenging childhoods. There were also things in my environment growing up that caused me to be hypervigilant, right? Queer in the New York City public school system, head on swivel, right? Things in my own environment, child of divorce, the way I had to be at my mother's, and this doesn't even have to do with my queerness, just like the environments at my mother's versus my father's, very different. I had to be very different people in both of those places. So as a child, that hypervigilance, baby, I was funneling it into activity. It was like, I wasn't a gifted, I don't have gifted child trauma. I want to be very abundantly clear on this. I do not identify with gifted child trauma because it was the gifted children giving me trauma. Okay? Who was making fun of the girl in class who was getting a 64 on a test and happy about it? It was I was the girl getting the 64, and it was the gifted child making fun of me. Okay, so I clearly have some resentment and some pent-up feelings about this. I also have trouble having empathy for the gifted child. But I know we all suffer and struggle. But anyway, I do identify with the I was so active as a kid. Like I was always focused on activities and playing. And like even like coming home, like I was always reading a book. I was always playing pretend. I was always going seeing a friend. Like I was all so active all the time. And I think my hypervigilance fed into the activity because it was the only way that I could manage it. And the OCD, right? Like I've had OCD my whole life, but it's only been in recent. Now as an adult though, there's more options, there's more choices, and I don't necessarily need to feed everything into being active all the time to keep myself safe, to keep myself hypervigilant. That instead I'm in this opposite where I'm frozen and I'm just stuck in the anxiety all the time. So I went from hypervigilance causing productivity to hypervigilance just causing absolute frozen state, anxiety, gripping for dear life onto everything. Does that make any sense at all? I know this is not revolutionary, and I think there's like 5 million books, articles, and talk shows about this, but I'm finally starting to get it to click. So maybe this will help you to get it. Maybe you're gonna see ways that hypervigilance has showed up in your life in ways you didn't even know, right? Like, you always hear people talking about like childhood trauma and unpacking your trauma and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm really starting to understand it. So anyway, it's a little crazy. It's a lot to unpack, and I'm unpacking it. And that is where I'm at with residual anxiety. I don't have anything enlightening about like moving through it, except for I'm beginning to view my anxiety, OCD, with a lot of this lens of hypervigilance, and that is really been something for me. And I hope it's something for you. And I hope this podcast was good, and it was a good yap. And this is something I'm working on, is just like going for this. I've said that before, but it is a little weird. Like TikToks, when I make TikToks, I feel like it's a little more purpose driven. I feel like I'm providing you with something like humor or insight or like a grocery haul. I don't know. Like it's more compact. It's more like, here's a service. I'm performing for you. Like I'm giving you something. I don't feel as much with this that I'm giving you something. It feels a little like I'm just sitting here yapping and working through my own stuff. And I am very much yapping and working through my own stuff. But I also want you to be getting something out of this. And as I'm saying this, I realize that literally the nature of a podcast is to sit and yap into a microphone. And I am nervous about that. I'm not nervous about it. I mean, this is nerve-wracking, but this is a tricky one for me. I'm working on it. Babes, I love you. I'm so glad you listened. I'm so glad you chose to stay. And that's all we have for today, is what I'm going to wrap up with. And I cannot wait until we are back together again. Oh, wait. If you have questions for advice, I would love to bring back the advice column. Or just like, if you just want to tell me about what's going on in your life, we could have like a reader section, a listener section. Like, here are some things going on in the community. I would love that. Love that. which leads me to the next episode, the episode following this one. I'm so sorry. I'm about to end on a little bit of a somber note. This time of year is always difficult for me because it's around the anniversary of the passing of one of my oldest and closest friends. It's been a long time now since they passed, actually. And that is something I'm dealing with. So basically what I'm trying to say to you is I'm in a big like lost puddle right now. And so next episode though, I'm going to talk about my friend who passed, but who I love so much. And I love talking about the people I love. And I love hearing about other people talking about the people they love. So I just want to say that. Tell me about the people you love. All right, that's all. I'm so glad, and I can't wait until we're simply reflecting again. All right, I love you all. Mwah.